humpback reproduction, migration, social interactions, and population dynamics. And I'll tell you that right now, the catalog from whale watch boats in areas like Norway and Iceland, where there's whaling, in areas of the Eastern Caribbean, where they vote with Japan and the Whaling Commission, that new data and new photographs are coming in daily, and they are all from whale watching vessels that have been trained. This is a slide of North Atlantic humpback whale sightings from a really incredible international project called YONA, Year of the North Atlantic Humpback. It was from 1992 to 1993. It was several governments. They took thousands of photographs and genetic samples. And this is what they came up with for breeding areas and feeding areas. All of this data, all of this information, and all of this effort. And what it did was confirm what we had learned through collaborative photo identification about where these whales feed and where these whales breed. There are, however, having said all that, scientific challenges. Data is not always the first priority at sea for some whale watch vessels. There's a limited time and a limited geographic range. Many collectors could have variable skills. There's a high data volume, and sometimes that could mean lower quality. And these useful data series take years and years to accumulate. We have to understand that there are biases and limitations, and these have to be carefully evaluated. And it's not appropriate to answer all questions. For example, we couldn't really do any quantitative or qualitative detailed behavioral analyses on board. And we obviously could not answer questions about impacts or vessel impacts. The keys to success: it's consistent data collection. We can add components if we don't lose quality. We can add specific environmental questions. We can look at breathing and respiratory rates. So we can add more data as we become more efficient at collecting the basic information. We focus on what can be reliably collected for all sightings. These are long data series, some of the longest on this species and some of the largest single databases in the world. And of course, the value of photo identification. And here it is in a nutshell. One area, a few whale-watching vessels, and over 60 scientific publications in peer-reviewed journals. One thing that I did not list here, and because of the effort data, a $150 GPS can give you a lot of added value to your data, that the data from our vessels was used by the International Whaling Commission to estimate an in-depth assessment on the North Atlantic humpback. So although the data is limited in its use, there are certain questions that you can answer, and you can help management. So let's move now to science. From science on whale watch boats to using that science for management and whale conservation. Our distribution and habitat use data was used by the federal government to show that this area called Stellwagen Bank had threatened and endangered species of whales. And in 1992, Congress designated it as a national marine sanctuary, and that was one of the criteria. All of that data came from whale watch boats. And shipping lanes. This is the area that Allison talked about. It's a very noisy area, and the shipping lane runs right through Stellwagen. So how could whale watch data possibly help whales? Well, if we look at a goal to spatially separate whales and vessels, and look at the top, the density of whales in the old shipping lane. If we look at the density of whales over this period from 1979 to 2004, all whale watch data, you'll see that 61,742 large whales were historically encountered in that area. By shifting the shipping lanes by 12 degrees, not adding an awful lot of time to the transit, that total was brought down to 11,922, an 81% reduction to risk. This does not say that no whale will be hit by a boat or killed by a boat, but what it does say is that it greatly reduces the likelihood of an impact. On the right, you can see a chart that very clearly shows you, in this graph, the difference in gray of the old shipping lane and in red to the new one. Let's look at it another way in terms of density. Here you can clearly see that the old shipping lane goes through those high red areas where the whales seem to be more concentrated. And that, again, that 12-degree rotation in the shipping lane actually greatly lowers the rate of encounter. And here's where whale watch data had another value to science and management. So we have the data being used to find out exactly what could be done to reduce the threats of ship strikes. And one of the whales most vulnerable to this is the North Atlantic right whale. There are fewer than 400 left in the entire world, and entanglements, as Ed knows well from working in this area, and ship strikes are the two biggest problems that they have. Scientists started to say, well, okay, we've looked at these, we believe that that's what the density is, it's historic, but why? Why are those whales here? So the whale watch data helped them to set a protocol for studies. And what they did was they started to look at sediment. What's underwater? What are the whales doing? And if you look here, you'll see in the old shipping lanes, one very important percentage, 48%, is sand. The current shipping lane at that time passed through areas of sandy bottom, and this is habitat that's favored by sand lance. And these fish are what the whales prey upon in Stellwagen Bank. So let's now look at the proposed shipping lane. And you'll see the percentage of sand goes down to 16%. Success, July 2007. All of these organizations met, including the International Maritime Organization, and they agreed that by shifting these 12 degrees, it would not add added time, it would reduce the risk of ship strikes to whales, and we now have a new shipping lane. I only have one slide on this because Ed really brought the point home last night, and that is that entanglements are a huge problem for whales. And at least off the east coast of the United States and Canada, nearly 1/4 of all entanglement sightings have come from whale watch vessels over the past decade. And many of them have been able to stand by the entanglements, as the Pacific Whale Foundation does here, and to actually become part of that team. Because it's one thing to sight a whale that's entangled. That's hard enough. Most of them, as Ed mentioned, are never ever seen. It's another thing to find it again if it's left on its own without a tag. And capacity building. International internship programs provide hands-on training and research, education, conservation, all these messagings, and management to enhance understanding and conservation of humpback whales and other marine mammals. In our international internship program, we've had interns from the US and Puerto Rico, from Canada, the Dominican Republic, and from Puerto Rico and Japan. They learn about data collection opportunistically on whale watch boats. They learn about conservation messaging. And then they have a time when they actually go out at the Center for Coastal Studies research boat, and they spend one whole month learning about database management and about data collection and research archives. And whale watch boats are a great platform for local students and docents. They're trained in data collection and take an active role in onboard education and conservation messaging. The two students you see are two students that actually started the first marine project for Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots program, and they started them aboard our boats. Val to the right is one of our many docents. She's over 80 years young, and she collects data and enthusiastically talks to our passengers about local culture and history and about the whales. Floating classrooms. Well, if you look all the way to the right, you'll see that this is right in your own backyard. This is a floating classroom that I went on with Pacific Whale Foundation and Meryl and her staff, and it was just incredible, everything that they can learn on board. And I think that floating classrooms, all of these around the world, that take students and teachers out into their own backyard, in many places, the slide in the middle is from Dominica. These students had never even been out on a pier. Most of them don't swim. So Maui is a wonderful, blessed place where most of their students here are engaged in the water that's here, and they have these wonderful activities. But in Dominica, it was the first time these students were seeing their land from the water and to see what a beautiful place they live in and the plethora of wildlife and marine life that was in their own backyard. And the other slide you see is our little blubber glove experiment that we have on our whale watch boats in Provincetown. So when you show students and teachers and managers what's within their reach, it then becomes important to them to protect them. Education and conservation messaging, and I believe that one of the most valuable aspects of whale watching is its potential to educate people of all ages and from all backgrounds to appreciate, value, and understand marine mammals, and to connect them in a dramatic way to another species and to the ocean. This is a first glimpse of plankton. The hope and the goal of whale watching education is to translate the whale watch experience to a wider audience and to inspire greater involvement and follow-up activity from those who participated. And that education received on a whale watch is retained and changes the behavior of passengers, making them more sensitive to whale, marine, and other environmental and conservation issues. In conclusion, research conducted on whale watch boats have increased our knowledge of cetacean occurrence, distribution, habitat use, biological parameters, and the degree of threats. It's assisted researchers in developing protocols for independent studies important to management. It's assisted in disentanglement efforts. It's provided data to help managers make informed decisions for whale protection and conservation. And as a platform of opportunity, whale watch vessels provide a consistent and cost-effective means for data collection, training, and living classrooms. And while a systematic evaluation of the success of whale watching education programs is lacking, there is a growing awareness. And be it from whale watching, floating classrooms, the media, school, or community-based programs, it's very clear to me that an increasing number of communities around the world now view whales as their heritage. That community pride in active participation leads to protection and preservation of species and environments at local, regional, and international efforts. And I think, thinking back on some of our presentations last night, that individuals around the world know they can make a difference through even seemingly small actions. Mahalo.